Hello again and welcome back to our course on Project 2013. In the last section we looked at some of the basic ideas behind scheduling, and in this section we're going to look at leveling, which is a process whereby we level the resources on a project, or at least try to. We try to get to a situation where none of the resources are over allocated. Now what I'm going to do in this section is to demonstrate leveling first and then to discuss exactly what's happened and how we control it. So let's get started. We're still looking at the same schedule, and in this case we've got 4 resource over allocations for the carpenter. In order to demonstrate leveling, what I'm going to do though is to change the view, and we're going to bring up a particular variant on the Gantt chart. So click on Gantt chart, come to more views, and one of the views there is leveling Gantt. So apply the leveling Gantt view. Now when you look at the leveling Gantt, one of the columns you can see in the table is this column, leveling delay. And the basic thing that happens when you level a project or part of a project is that leveling delay is adding to some of the tasks. Now when you see a time period like the time period you can see here, E days, you can also get things like E weeks, it's elapsed. So an E day is a 24-hour elapsed period. It doesn't relate to the number of working hours in a day, for example. It's just an elapsed period. So if something has a leveling delay of 3 E days, it means that task has been delayed by 3 elapsed days. It's moved later in our schedule. When you first look at a new project, or one that hasn't been leveled before anyway, then all of the leveling delays will normally be set to 0 E days. And when you perform leveling, then some of the tasks will get a leveling delay added to them. So what I'm going to do now is to level this project, and you'll see what effect that has. Notice at the moment that we've still got these 4 carpenter tasks over here. We've still got the 4 red markers to indicate over allocation. So let's do some leveling. Let's go to the resource tab, and in the level group on the resource tab, right in the middle, there's a button that says level all, and this will level the entire project. Now generally speaking, you wouldn't necessarily level an entire project. You'd probably level part of it, maybe just over some time period or for 1 or 2 resources, but let's do a level all to see what happens. Now when we've done a level all here, what actually happens is that we find that some of the tasks have leveling delays defined. Upper floor doors has got a 15 E day elapsed day leveling delay. Now what that means, if you look at the relevant part of the Gantt chart on the right, is that the little green block is where the task originally was, and the blue block is where it is now, and that represents a 15 elapsed day delay. Similarly, if you look at ground floor windows, that's got a 7 elapsed day delay, and upper floor windows has got a 12 elapsed E day delay. Notice that all of the over allocation markers have gone, so Project 2013 has successfully removed all of the over allocations on this project. Now I haven't talked so far about end dates and so on, but I'm sure you can realize from this that it will have effectively pushed back the end date of our project because we've delayed some of the tasks within the project. That won't always happen though, but very often it will. Now notice that we were only getting over allocations for the carpenter, but because we said level all of the project has been leveled. So even some of the tasks like lay foundation, which aren't jobs that the carpenter was working on and didn't have an over allocation problem, have been leveled. Of course the leveling delay is 0 E days, but you can still see the green and blue blocks there, just emphasizing the fact that there was no delay added to this task. To undo the effects of leveling, you could just use the undo button. But within the level group there is also a clear leveling button, which basically clears all the leveling that's been done on a selected part of the project. So let's just say clear leveling. Entire project or selected tasks, we'll go for entire project, and basically that'll put things back to the way that they were. Now let's look at another approach. Let's click this time on Level Resource. And what that does is to give us a list of resources for the project, and we can choose a specific resource, like in this case Carpenter, and click on Level Now. And what happens is that just the tasks for which the Carpenter is a resource are subject to leveling. As before, the leveling has removed all of the over allocations. So what I want to look at next are the leveling options, which are also accessible from the level group on the Resource tab. So click on Leveling Options and you get the Resource Leveling dialog. We're going to go through this starting at the top. Some of these options take a little bit of explanation. Right at the top, the first one, Leveling Calculations, you have a choice of automatic or manual. And I have this currently set at manual. In fact, I pretty much always have this set at manual. If you have it set at automatic, then while you're working on your project, Project 2013 will be leveling the resources for you. I find that this can be incredibly annoying really, because until you've got the project in, you may not have made final decisions about who to allocate resources to, and sometimes until you can see the whole picture, it's difficult to make specific decisions about individual tasks in terms of resource assignments. So for example, if I've got a general resource called Carpenter, but maybe I've got 3 named carpenters, I may want to put Carpenter on each of the tasks for which a carpenter is needed, and then decide who does which job later. Having allocated the resource Carpenter to each of those tasks, it will probably get pretty much over allocated straight away, but of course that's only a temporary measure until I assign the named carpenters. Now you may choose to work with leveling calculations set to automatic. That's entirely up to you, but I generally have it set at manual all of the time. Now the next option says look for over allocations on A, and then you have a drop down where you can choose between minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, month by month basis. When you allocate resources to the various tasks in your project, you will sometimes find that somebody appears to be over allocated and they aren't really. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose that you have a particular resource who's allocated for 50% of their time in a particular week to do a particular task. So half of their time is being used throughout the week to do a task. So they're certainly not over allocated if they don't have any other tasks. But let's suppose that that resource has to take a day off, say to go to the doctors. So the person is working 4 days and at the doctor's on 1 day. Now during that 4 days, that person can quite easily do the 5 half days of work, the 2.5 days of work that you've got allocated. But the problem is that according to the schedule, on 1 day they can't do that half day. Now you and I know that they can spread the half day they can't do because they're at the doctor's over the rest of the week. But Project 2013 doesn't necessarily know that. It can't make those sorts of assumptions itself. Now, if we look for over allocations on a day-by-day basis, Project 2013 in that situation would find a problem, because it would say that person who's scheduled to work on that task for half of their time can't do any of it on that particular day because they're at the doctor's. Their calendar says that they're not available. But we know that they can spread the work out over the week. Now in that situation, if we looked for allocations on a week-by-week basis, there wouldn't be a problem, because Project would add up what they've got allocated for the week. So they've got 2.5 days of actual work, that's 50% of a 5-day week, and a day at the doctor. So 2.5 plus 1, that's 3.5 days in a 5-day working week. There isn't an over allocation. Now, how you do this and which of these options you choose will very much depend on you, your project, and your approach to resource leveling. I tend, on this sort of project that takes a period of weeks or months, I would tend to have over allocations looked for on a week-by-week basis. But we're going to run with day-by-day at the moment, and then we'll look at 1 or 2 of the problems that occur as we come across them later on. Now let's look at the next option, which is a checkbox: clear leveling values before leveling. You've already seen that the way that leveling works is to add a leveling delay. And what you can do by having that checkbox checked is that each time that Project 2013 tries to level your project or a selected part of your project, it begins by clearing the leveling that it's done before and effectively starting from scratch. Now the significance of that will become more apparent later on, but I generally work on the principle that I clear leveling values before leveling. So I ask it to make a fresh start. It still has all the rules in place. The resource availability may have changed, tasks may have changed, introduced, deleted, completed, and so on. So I generally tend to find that starting from scratch with that on any particular occasion gives better results. But again, it's partly a matter of personal preference. Now, roughly in the middle of the resource leveling dialog there, we have a couple of options where we can decide whether to level the entire project or whether to level a selected date range. We've seen that before. But below that we have options related to how to resolve over allocations and the rules to follow when resolving over allocations. Now these rules related to resolving over allocations you need to understand pretty well, so we're going to concentrate on those in the next section. That's it for this one. I'll see you then.